What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. So day 2 of the New York Jets training camp has kicked off, and we have some updates to cover. Not as active as maybe yesterday was in terms of big news, but definitely still a lot of things to get into. So to start off with some of the practice, generally it was a light practice from my understanding. Haven't been able to catch up on some of the live feed and the press conferences from today just yet, but I was able to come up with some numbers and some info that was put out there. So in terms of Aaron Rodgers, pretty okay-ish day, 6 of 10. A lot of checkdowns to his running backs. I've seen a pass outright to Garrett Wilson. And then the cornerbacks seem like they've had a pretty decent day, specifically DJ Reed, Michael Carter II, Jimmy Moreland, all getting some pass breakups there. Was particularly impressed with the quick rep that I seen with DJ Reed versus Tyler Conklin, especially since you have a physical mismatch there with him. So seems like he's hot right out of the gate, ready to get right back to what we seen our quarterbacks doing last year. I will be interested to know when we start seeing Sauce Gardner get hyped up, because the volume's been pretty low in terms of noise around how he's performing around camp. So it'll be interesting to kind of see there, but again, no step backs or anything like that expected from my end. And that's about as much as I gathered from training camp with the specific practice as it is. Some of the news that's centered around that, though, was pretty interesting. So we talked about Mekhi Becton potentially earning the left tackle spot. Me specifically, I thought the competition could be over pretty quick if Dwayne Brown wasn't ready for the start of training camp, especially if it's maybe longer than a week, much like we seen the year before with Mekhi Becton. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Dwayne Brown wasn't available today. Salah seems to have mentioned that it was a personal day taken by Dwayne Brown. So I suppose we can expect him to be ready and an active participant in that battle. But what happened with the offensive lineup itself is maybe potentially concerning for those that are thinking highly of Mekhi Becton, right? And this may be as true of a competition as it gets, because the starting lineup that I seen, and that there are some tweets that people sent me, some screenshots, and then of course a couple articles that I dug into. The tackle lineup at various points was basically Billy Turner lining up as starting left tackle. Of course, we had I was getting ready to say LaDainian Tomlinson. We had Lakin Tomlinson at left guard. We had Connor McGovern starting at center. We had AVT at right guard, and then we had Max Mitchell as the starting right tackle. Billy Turner and Mekhi Becton were basically rotating in and out as the starting tackle, but Mekhi Becton basically walked into the building as a second string offensive lineman for this team. And so I don't know if he ended up getting any official reps on the right side. All the video footage that I seen and then the screenshots and articles only mentioned him being on the left. But this may be shaping up for the New York Jets to actually give him a legit shot at the position. A lot of us expected that he automatically be moved to the right, but maybe they're leaning on his words and hoping that he can prove himself right. And if he does truly win the competition, then you have a different conversation about what you want to do in terms of your tackle situation. I think the level of play isn't going to be as much of a question as it's going to be how do we want to handle the backup tackle spot, right? With the left tackle situation, Dwayne Brown realistically is only a left tackle. Mekhi Becton is a guy that, he's young, he has the athleticism. He could play both sides, but obviously with that surgically repaired right knee. And then, of course, Mekhi Becton's own admittance that he really only wants to be known as a left tackle. You'd expect that those two positions for your starting spot and the backup are locked in. If Max Mitchell truly ends up winning the right tackle spot, then that puts you in a better situation, because then you do have Billy Turner who can operate on both sides, and then potentially offers better play as a guard from what I've seen from some conversations from Joe Blewett from X Factor. So that puts you in a much better situation than having to force Mekhi Becton on the right side and then figuring out what you want to do with the swing, trusting Max Mitchell, who hasn't really got any time in on the left side, and then Billy Turner, of course. So much better. Something to definitely keep tabs on. Also, keep in mind the practice. This was, day one of an official practice. There were no pads going on, so I'm not feeding into much of anything too much. And I'm sure the plan with Mekhi Becton is definitely more so of just kind of getting his feet wet again after, only seeing 48 snaps in the last 2 years, after barely getting through, I want to say it was maybe 2-3 weeks of practice before he had ended up, what was it, or breaking his kneecap before his season was over again. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to oversell anything with it. I do know a lot of the noise that I've seen was the fact that Bryce Huff beat him extremely quick on a pass rushing snap, and so that's why I mentioned there's no pads here. Things are definitely going to look a lot different for the speed guys, and we know how legendary Bryce Huff's get off is. So, it's going to be very easy for hands to get slid off and out of place and all these different things. So, the big takeaway there for me is going to be Connor McGovern is starting, meaning Joe Tippmann, again, another true competition at this spot. We're not just going to hand him anything. I think those days are over. Zach Wilson kind of burnt that route down for a lot of people, I feel like, which is a great thing, in my opinion. A meritocracy-based team always works out better than one that's going to be based off draft status and, politics and all of those different things. So, again, Connor McGovern starting at center. Trusting Billy Turner over Mekhi Becton early on in camp. Not necessarily as crazy as it sounds if you want to take it again from the standpoint that Mekhi Becton is being eased back into things, even though his offseason has gone extremely well. Some other things, injury updates for us. So, CJ Uzama, Randall Cobb, Robert Saleh mentioned that he expects them to return from the physically unable to perform list within the next couple of days. So I would imagine early next week we start seeing them get integrated into training camp practices. CJ Uzama, we got that early chemistry report with Aaron Rodgers, so it will be nice to kind of see if we can actually get the most out of his yards after catch ability. We've seen a shell of what he was with the Bengals last year, and that really was because our offensive line was decimated. We needed that additional blocker, and then once we kind of loosened up and decided we don't have too much to lose towards the end of the season, and we started trying to get him more involved, we've seen those flashes of how dangerous our two tight end package could be between him and Tyler Conklin. Randall Cobb, it'll just be nice to see that immediate chemistry between Aaron Rodgers and him. Try to see how heavy maybe his role may look like earlier on. I think a lot of us are penciling him in as the starting slot. That may be a competition between him and Mecole Hardman, since we also expect, and from what I understand, the contract situation around Mecole Hardman was definitely centered on showcasing his talents a little bit more and not just making him, the speed gadget guy. So we'll see. You're going to have to get on the field consistently enough to be able to, put the work in to do the damage we expect him to do. And then, of course, Randall Cobb is old. 35, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head. So you don't want to burn him down over the course of the entire season anyway. So it probably would be it would be most sensible to have a guy like Mecole Hardman used in that position as the starter. And then, of course, yesterday, and I still haven't got a lot of details about this, but we talked about Jarek Bernard-Converse, the injury that he had suddenly that nobody really knows about, but he was seen walking with a boot on his left leg today. So he's a few weeks away from returning. If he's wearing a boot, I'm going to imagine there's a fracture or something that happened in there because, I forget what they call it, but not having like a Liz Frank injury, I'm forgetting what it's called. My doctor just ended up telling me I had this too. Plantar fasciitis. It wouldn't be anything crazy like that. The walking boot will really kind of be used to hold the foot in place. So I would imagine there's a fracture or something. I am curious how it happened since, the players were away from the team for a legit amount of time. So I'm curious why we wouldn't have tried to put him on the NFI list, the non-football injury or illness list, and use him on that designation because, from what I understand, operates very close to the PUP. But we'll see. I mean, ultimately it's all semantics with me right now. He's not on the field. That's all that really matters. And then we did get to wrap up our day two activity. We had two signings that are being welcomed onto the team with Chuck Clark and Deontay Spencer going on IR Wednesday. Yeah, when we put them on Wednesday. That opened up two spots on our team, so we have decided to go out and sign wide receiver Alec Erickson, and then safety Dane Cruikshank. And I believe Alex Erickson was originally with the Buccaneers for a couple games. Dane Cruikshank was with the Titans, from what I recall. Either way, today was a little bit busy, but I'll drop a little bit of a background on them some point by the weekend for sure to see what we're looking at. But basically all that means to me is we're looking at more depth pieces in the wide receiver room, of course, to just continue to add to that competition. And then in terms of the safety position, Ashton Davis was always the guy that I was looking at as a casualty, regardless of us adding anybody. So we'll see. This is definitely a push for him. This is a push for, Trey Dean. It would be worth it to take as many looks at as many safeties as we can possibly get up until we officially need to get down to 53, just because there's a real life scenario where we only end up walking into the season with 3 safeties. Of course, third one having a wide range of versatility, I imagine. But if we do want to go with 4, then we're going to have to sacrifice another position, and so you'd have to, aside from those guys playing special teams, that third, fourth guy, you'd have to imagine that each one of those players in the safety room will have a specific role that this coaching staff feels comfortable with. You talk about Tony Adams. He could be used at free safety. He can come down to, become a nickel back in the slot. You have Jordan Whitehead, who, can technically play free safety, can play strong safety. And then you'll have a guy like Trey Dean, for example. You can utilize him against tight ends, against running backs to kind of assist with screens, and just add a potential X factor in terms of, physical trait mismatches. And then who else would we got? We have Ashton Davis, Skip, and then, of course, our new guy here, Cruikshank. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Safety is going to be really interesting. I'm hoping we hear more about them than what we've had in the past, which, Hard Knocks is going to be the biggest the help with that, right, in terms of some real-life case studies, seeing what's happening on the practice field, kind of diving into what a lot of these guys are thinking and, seeing out there. So super excited for that. And then as far as the final rumor to wrap things up here, Robert Saleh was once again asked about Dalvin Cook. And, he summed it up pretty nicely with Dalvin. Obviously, you never want to say no to a great player. Again, I highlighted the fact before that this is a huge change in tone from what we were hearing when Ezekiel Elliott was originally rumored to us. And in my mind, they're in kind of different stages of their careers. But talent-wise, I can't help but think that they're not too far away, right? Obviously, Cook has the better recent history, I suppose. The highlighted 1,100 yards, 4 seasons, all that good stuff. But I think Ezekiel Elliott would have a pretty strong and clear role on his team as well. But he's not going to be as much of an all-around, do-it-all back as what you get with a guy like Dalvin Cook. And then, of course, you don't know how the ego trips and stuff are going to play into all of that. We've at least heard Dalvin Cook mention he understands he doesn't need to be running back one coming into a situation. So I'm not holding my breath for it still. Again, I'm not really excited about pouring more money into the running back room when I still think we definitely have a room full of interesting players. But, all hands on deck. I won't be mad about that in terms of trying to find a way to upgrade every possible position. We focus on the starters a lot, but the backups, if Cruikshank overtakes a guy like Ashton Davis, fine by me, right? Find out a way to maximize everything we can for this roster. Let's make a deep run. Let's go out there and get it. But let me know what your guys' thoughts were for day 2. I'll probably try to do another live stream by this weekend for whatever happens on day 3, etc. But appreciate you guys coming through, and I'll catch you again. Peace.